Welcome back to Occupy the Media. I'm Jared Jacang Mayer, and I'm occupying your screen with FSTV Executive Director Don Rojas and news producer Marcy Miranda. 2012 is a historic election year. In this segment, we want to talk about the election issues that impact the 99%. And with us is Aura Bogado. She's a voting rights blogger and community journalism coordinator for colorlines.com, and she's joining us via Skype telephone. Aura, how's it going?
Great, Jared. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So I'm glad to have you on here because I really want you to help us unwind this bundle of lawsuits that have been filed in Florida, a state that's leading the wave in restricting voter rights. And in the latest turn of events, the Department of Justice is suing the Sunshine State. So can you just give us a quick breakdown about what is happening with these lawsuits, and then we can talk about the larger meaning of that?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of lawsuits. Florida really feels like a free-for-all, right? Because Florida decided to do this illegal purge of voters, and of voters of color in particular, it's attracted a lot of action. So there's already 4 lawsuits, and I'm guessing that we're going to see a lot more before it's over. But what's important to keep in mind, as much as the Department of Justice is suing Florida, and Florida has now also decided to sue the Department of Justice, there's everyday people who are also fighting back against this, right? Everyday citizens, and I mean citizens in that legal status sort of way, citizens who are challenging the voter suppression efforts that have now become a pattern across the U.S. And while Florida is certainly a flashpoint today, it's no coincidence that it's also a battleground state, and we've seen these efforts to purge voters off the rolls or otherwise make it difficult, if not impossible, to vote in other battleground states.
Yeah, and I want to talk about how that, how this particular case in Florida might affect the presidential election. But from the way I understand it, Florida, under Governor Rick Scott, is saying we fear that there are all of these illegal voting going on, and so we want to adopt this policy where we're finding out who is actually not supposed to be voting, who may be undocumented or for whatever reason. And so they have this policy to purge these voter rolls. The Department of Justice comes in and says, wait a minute, you can't do that. What is the DOJ's objection to this particular policy?
Well, the DOJ has a lot of ground, but in particular under the Voting Rights Act, Florida, because it has a history of discriminating against minority voters, Florida has to announce at least 90 days before an election if they're going to be doing a purge like this. So just on its face, to announce this 2 months before the Florida primary, which is taking place in August, is plainly illegal. They haven't given the Department of Justice that 90-day window in which to either approve or disapprove of the purge. And yes, there's a lot of talk about supposedly preventing fraud, but this isn't really preventing fraud. What it's doing, it's an attempt to prevent voting.
Yep. Well, Marcy, I want to get your take in a second, but I want to encourage our viewers out there to pick up the phone and join the conversation by dialing 877-575-FSTV. On this show, the large topic we're talking about has the Occupy movement changed the national conversation? Even presidential candidates are now talking about issues raised by the 99%. But what do you think are the Occupy movement's biggest accomplishments so far? Give us a call or post a comment on our Facebook page. Marcy, as Aura mentioned, voter suppression efforts or concerns about illegal voting, we see these in multiple different states that are that have Republican governorships. But in Florida in particular, why is this particular case significant in terms of the upcoming election?
Yeah, well, it's like what I said. Florida has a history of discriminating against voters of color, and if we look back to the 2000 election when Bush was elected, quote unquote, the first time around, it was Florida really that threw the wrench in the game, and look at how different our country is a decade later because of that. So I think that's really why a lot of people are paying particular attention to what's going on in Florida, and also because, frankly, it's the one that's most aggressively pursuing voter restriction rights. You see them in North Carolina, you see them all over the place, but Florida really in particular going through the books and saying, well, you can vote, you can't vote, and using a lot of data that sometimes isn't accurate. That's a pretty big deal to democracy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Don?
the issue of voter fraud, as the Republicans want to call it, is a bogus issue. There is no pervasive evidence anywhere in the country that voter fraud has been taking place systematically in the last several election cycles. So this is clearly an effort by a conservative Tea Party governor in Florida, all right, targeting voters of color.
So, Auda, before we say goodbye to you, voter fraud, is it a solution without a problem? According to what Don is alluding to, there's so much concern about this issue that there being widespread voter fraud, but what do you think is really the motivation behind it?
Right, I agree with Don that there is no pervasive problem. There is no problem. No one's been able to prove any kind of widespread or even not so widespread voter fraud. The real issue here is trying to get certain kinds of voters off of the polls. In Florida, Latino voters, for example, make up just 16%. That's 16% of Florida's electorate, yet they make up 61% of the names that are targeted for purging. And so, not surprisingly, a lot of these people who have either gotten these letters saying, no, you're not actually an immigrant when they are completely, you're not a citizen when they're completely a citizen, has already had this chilling effect among the sort of new citizen community. And that's really what we should be more concerned about the people who are trying to participate in democracy and trying to participate in the civic process and are being targeted to not participate.
And so, Auda, in this particular case there in Florida, will you continue to cover it there at colorlines.com?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Will you still be continuing to cover this Florida case as it develops at colorlines.com?
Oh, yes. We have teamed up with The Nation, and we are going to be following this through the election and the fallout that we perceive that's going to be coming. We'll also be working with community journalists, and you can read all our updates several times a week at colorlines.com.
Okay, Aura Bagato from colorlines.com, thanks for joining us. It's now time to pass the mic to you, our viewers. Let's hear what you have to say about some of the issues we've been talking about tonight.
Mic check. Mic check.
Okay, on the line from Pennsylvania, Rochelle, you're on Occupy the Media.
Hi, how you doing?
We're doing great. Question or comment for us? We have a lot of subjects we're hashing through. What are you interested in?
Well, one thing I want to say. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. We're talking about the future of the Occupy movement. Is that what your question or comment's about?
I think your presence, that you're still here, is. I think you're winning that way, and I think your multitasking of tackling many issues is also successful.
Okay, so if I hear you correctly, you think that Occupy Wall Street's focus on multiple issues rather than one singular one is a good way to go.
I think it's a good way because it's no longer a single issue that's going on. There's multiple things, like people losing houses, people don't have jobs, so there's various things that need to be addressed. And I think that's very good that you're doing it.
All right, Rochelle, well, thanks a lot for coming in and letting us know your opinion on that. Let's try and get to one more call before we have to go. Greg from South Carolina, you're on the air.
Yes. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, my feelings on Occupy, right from the beginning, a lot of the doubters complained that it was too broad, there were too many issues, but that's the reality. There are just so many issues, so many ways that the injustices are affecting the 99%. Okay. What I see happening now is that there are smaller demonstrations, but focusing on specific issues. All these things going on. The nuns at Paul Ryan's office, the stop and search protests, the guys at Jamie Dimon here, they are all in the spirit of Occupy.
So it sounds like you think it's a big tent and we should keep it that way. Okay, Greg from South Carolina, thanks for giving us a call. On Occupy the Media, we want to share your stories. If you have a video you'd like to see on the program, email it to us or post it on our Facebook page. And on May 1st, about 100 students walked out of Paul Robeson High School in Brooklyn, New York. The students were protesting the proposed closure of their school, and they took to the streets for a day of action and education. Let's take a look at some of the headlights from that march.
The only way excellent education will happen right here in New York City, if you have the power.
Although our school is being phased out, it doesn't mean other schools have to be phased out.
So we're here to boycott what they're doing in our school, the unfair closing, the cell phone policies. Like, we're tired. We're tired and no one else is standing up for us, so we're standing up for ourselves. We need our education. Why close the schools? Not all schools are going to have the best policies, but we're learning and we're trying. So I feel like it's unfair. And I hope that they stop closing the schools and they let Paul Robeson stay. March on, march on. Solidarity, in solidarity.
Hello, I'm Antoinette June with another Occupy update. There will be an Occupy National Gathering in Philadelphia on June 30th through July 4th. This week-long event will be jam-packed with direct actions, a movement-building session, and the creation of a vision for a democratic future. For ways to get involved or to join an action planning committee, visit OccupyNationalGathering.org.